"We found you a place," my daughter-in-law said, "because you're too old to be useful here anymore." She said it the way someone talks about a cracked dish. Not angry, not even cruel on purpose. Just practical. Set it aside. Replace it. I stood at the kitchen counter in their big suburban house outside Phoenix, still wearing my old holiday sweater, brushing crumbs into my palm. Music thumped softly from the living room. Caterers' trays lined the island. Champagne glasses glittered under the recessed lights. The air smelled like garlic and roasted meat, rosemary and butter. It should have felt warm. It should have felt like family. Instead, my ears rang. "A place?" I managed. My voice sounded thin, like it belonged to someone else. Brittany didn't even glance up from the cheese board she was arranging. "A really nice assisted living community, Angie. Don't say it like it's bad. They have activities, a game room, people your age. It'll be fun for you." Fun for me. The way she said it turned my stomach. Like I was a child she was dropping off somewhere so she could get back to her real life. I watched her hands move. Perfect nails, perfect rings, over food I'd helped prep, groceries I'd gone out for that morning while she got her hair done. My son, Ethan, stood at the sink rinsing wine glasses. He could have said something. Anything. "Mom isn't going anywhere. Let's talk about this later." Even a nervous joke. Instead, he just kept clinking glass against glass, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the faucet like it could save him. Resentment climbed up my chest like heat. Every splash of water sounded like a small betrayal. "What do you mean, a place?" I asked again, because my mind refused to hold the words. "This is my home." Brittany sighed, her tired mom sigh, the one she uses when one of the boys spills juice. "Angie, it's not really your home. We've all talked about this. You've been staying with us. And it's been great, really." She put on the bright neighbor smile. "But the boys are older. We need more space. And it's just a lot having you here." A lot. That word landed like a slap. A lot to cook dinner most nights so she could order salads and say she was too busy to think about food. A lot to fold laundry that wasn't mine, matching socks I didn't buy, smoothing shirts I never chose. A lot to pick up their boys from school, sit through homework, show up to conferences when their schedules were insane. All of it flashed through me at once. Birthday cakes I baked, Halloween costumes I sewed, curtains I hemmed for this very kitchen. And suddenly, every kind thing I'd done felt different. Like a thread they'd been wrapping around my wrists, pulling tighter every time I said yes. "Mom," Ethan finally said, and the word hurt because it sounded tired, not loving. "Britt and I have been looking at this place for a while. It's really close. You'll have your own room, your own bathroom, staff on call. It's safer." Safer. We both knew what that meant. Easier for them. No more extra plate at dinner. No more careful conversations when they wanted friends over. No more old woman at the end of the hall taking up space, needing things, existing too loudly. I thought of the guest room. My room. The one I'd painted myself the first summer I moved in. Soft blue, so the desert sun wouldn't feel so harsh. The one where I kept my teaching certificates in a box in the closet. The one where Ethan's photo sat on the nightstand. 6 years old and missing his front teeth, smiling like the world was safe. In their mouths, that room shrank into a borrowed corner. "We just thought it would be easier," Brittany added, finally looking at me. Her eyes were cool, her sympathy polished and performative. "For everyone. For everyone." Not once did she say, "What do you want?" Not once did she ask if I was scared. Not once did she speak like I was a person with a life inside her. Resentment burned behind my eyes, sharp enough to sting. I remembered the day I signed over most of my inheritance so they could afford the down payment on this house. I remembered Ethan hugging me in the driveway afterward, holding me tight and saying, "You'll always have a home with us, Mom." I believed him so completely, I never insisted my name be on anything. I didn't want a contract. I wanted family. Now he couldn't meet my eyes. "Guests will be here in 40 minutes, Brittany said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Could you finish up the pigs in a blanket? And maybe eat earlier so the kitchen's clear when people start arriving?" The casualness stole my breath. She had just told me I was being moved out of their lives like an old couch, and now she was assigning me appetizers, reminding me to eat out of sight. "Sure," I heard myself say. The word tasted like dust. I cooked the little sausages, my hands moving without my permission. Oil popped, heat rose, and inside my ribs, her phrases replayed like a cruel chant. "Too old to be useful. Not really your home. It'll be easier." Each one pressed another fingerprint of anger into my skin. When the food was done, I put 3 pieces on a small plate and carried it upstairs, like a waitress sneaking leftovers. Laughter filled the house. Bottles popped. Someone shouted a greeting. No one called my name. No one checked on me. They never did. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the pale blue wall. The shadow of the window frame slid slowly across it as the sun sank. Downstairs, Brittany's voice floated up, warm and sparkling for company. "Come in! Don't mind the mess. My mother-in-law's around here somewhere." Around here somewhere, like a misplaced item. In that moment, something in me went very still. Not numb, not calm, just decided. I opened the closet and reached past my winter coat. I pulled down my old suitcase. My hands shook, but they didn't stop. 2 changes of clothes, toothbrush, my worn leather wallet. From the shoebox under the bed, I took the envelope of cash I'd been saving for emergencies. Then I grabbed the rusted key to the little cottage I still owned in Pine Hollow, 3 hours north. A place I kept because it was mine. Not borrowed, not temporary, mine. Ethan's childhood photo smiled up at me from the nightstand, gap-toothed and innocent. I touched the glass with my fingertips. "You used to need me," I whispered. My throat tightened. "Now you're done." Downstairs, the music got louder. I tore a small piece of paper from my notebook and wrote a short note, my pen pressing too hard. "Don't worry. I won't be a burden anymore." The words were bitter on the page, but they were the truth as they saw it, and I was tired of begging to be seen differently. I slipped on my coat, lifted the suitcase, walked out of the room. No one noticed me in the hallway. No one paused their laughter. No one turned around. I passed the noise and the light and stepped out the front door. The desert air was cool against my face. The sky was fading into violet. I pulled the suitcase behind me, its wheels whispering over the driveway, and headed toward the bus stop that would take me downtown, away from the house that had never really been mine. By the time I got to the downtown bus station, my hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the ticket. The place buzzed under harsh fluorescent light. The floor was dull and sticky, and the plastic chairs along the wall were shiny and cold. I sat anyway, hugging my small suitcase to my chest like it was the only solid thing left. The ticket to Pine Hollow was folded in my coat pocket. I kept touching the edge of it just to feel paper under my fingertips. Proof. I wasn't stepping out for fresh air. I wasn't going for a visit. I was leaving my son's house because they'd decided I was too old to be useful. Those words replayed in my head, slow and clean, like a song I couldn't turn off. Too old to be useful. Said while Brittany arranged cheese and fruit like she was hosting a show. Said while Ethan rinsed wine glasses and acted like the sink was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. Each time I pictured it, the resentment sharpened. They hadn't yelled. They hadn't slammed doors. That almost made it worse. It was calm, planned, neat, like they'd already packed me up in their minds. I tried to swallow the feeling down, but my chest stayed tight. The station smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. A couple argued softly near the vending machines. Nobody looked at me twice. Nobody knew that the woman in a worn winter coat was sitting there because her own family had decided she was extra. I told myself to breathe. In, out. Keep it together. But my eyes filled anyway, and the tears came before I could stop them. Not tidy, silent tears. My shoulders shook. I pressed my hand over my mouth to trap the sound, embarrassed by how loud grief can be in a public place. My body had been quiet for too long. It didn't ask my permission anymore. Memory after memory came in waves. Brittany, smiling sweetly, saying, "The boys like it better when I read to them, Angie. Your stories are kind of old-fashioned." Ethan laughing, not unkindly, but not kindly either when I worried about homework. "You worry too much. You're not in charge anymore." Little dismissals I'd brushed aside because I wanted peace, because I didn't want to be the difficult mother, because I kept telling myself they were busy, stressed, young. But there they were now, lined up in a row, sharp as bright lights. I had stepped aside again and again. I had made myself smaller, and they had taken that as proof I didn't matter. A warm voice broke through. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I wiped my cheeks with the back of my hand and looked up. A young woman in blue hospital scrubs had slid into a chair nearby. She had that tired, careful posture of someone who spends long hours on her feet. A badge clipped to her top caught the light when she moved. Her eyes were kind, the kind that don't look away when things get messy. "I'm fine," I tried to say. The words came out cracked. "I'm sorry. I'm making a scene." "You're not," she said, steady. "I'm Carla. I just got off a double shift. I've seen real scenes." She angled her body toward me without crowding me. "You look like someone who could use a friend for a minute." Friend. The word hit me in the softest place because it wasn't something I'd been offered in a long time, not in a simple, human way. No polite smile, no hidden impatience. Something in me loosened. The story spilled out, messy and fast. I told her about moving in after my husband died, how it was supposed to be temporary, how Ethan had looked me in the eyes and said, "We want you here, Mom. Don't be alone." I told her how 1 month turned into 6, then a year, how I started cooking because it felt good to be needed, how I started doing pickups and homework because someone had to, how I kept saying yes until helping became my whole role. And I told her about Brittany's rules. "Angie, could you not correct me in front of the kids? It confuses them." The way she'd thank me in front of guests and then, later, speak to me in a voice so flat it felt like a closed door. The way she called my room the guest room, even after I painted it and put my books on the shelves. As I spoke, I could hear resentment in my own voice, turning my words hard at the edges. I hated that. I hated how bitter I sounded. But I couldn't pretend anymore. When I repeated Brittany's line, "We just thought it would be easier," my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. Easier than talking to me like an adult. Easier than honoring the promise that I would always have a home with them. Easier than admitting they liked my free labor, my quiet help, but didn't want my presence when it stopped being convenient. Carla listened without interrupting. She didn't rush me. She didn't offer a bright, empty slogan. Her expression shifted from concern to disbelief to something that looked like anger on my behalf. It felt strange, watching someone react to my pain like it mattered. I told her about the envelope of cash under my bed, my just-in-case money. I told her about the rusted key in my pocket, the key to the little cottage in Pine Hollow I'd kept all these years because some part of me refused to give up my last piece of independence. I told her I planned to disappear there, to be quiet, to stop taking up space. Carla leaned back slowly like a thought had landed in her mind with weight. She studied my face, not staring, just looking, like she was trying to place me in a memory. "Angie," she said, quieter now, "this might sound strange, but did you ever teach kindergarten on the South Side, at Lincoln Elementary?" The question sliced through my tears. It was so specific it didn't feel random. My breath caught. "Yes," I said, "a long time ago." Her eyes widened and then softened. She let out a slow breath, like she'd been holding it. "My dad has been looking for you for years," she said. I noticed Carla jump to her feet before I noticed the man she was waving to. Her whole face shifted, from exhausted nurse to excited daughter in a single second. She pointed in my direction, and that was when I realized the man in the gray coat was staring straight at me, like he wasn't sure I was real. "Ms. Lopez?" he asked, his voice unsteady. "Angie Lopez." Hearing my name spoken with that much feeling made my throat tighten. At Ethan's house, I was Mom when they needed something, and your mom when Brittany wanted to complain. I couldn't remember the last time anyone said Angie like I was a person, not a complication. "Yes," I said. "Do I know you?" He stepped closer, and suddenly I saw it. The same dark eyes I once knew in a small boy standing in my kindergarten classroom, tugging at his shirt because his shoes had holes. The memory hit so hard I had to grip the arm of the plastic chair. I saw myself years ago, opening the supply closet, kneeling down, slipping a new pair of sneakers into his hands. Shoes I'd bought with my own money. I remembered my father shaking his head when I told him. "You think they'll remember you?" he said. "You're not important." Now here I was, sitting in a bus station because my own son had decided I was in the way. The same message, just delivered by different mouths. "I'm Daniel," the man said softly. "Daniel Rivera. You bought me shoes, coats. You sent food home in my backpack. I've been trying to find you for years." The station blurred. The lights, the floor, the noise. While I was being pushed out of my son's life, someone had been looking for me. The unfairness of it burned. I had given Ethan everything, even my retirement savings, and he'd agreed to send me away. This man, who I'd helped when he was 5, was looking at me like I mattered. Carla sat beside me again, smiling through tears. "I told you it was her," she said to her father. Then to me, "He kept a class photo from your room on his desk all these years." Daniel let out a shaky laugh. "They call me counselor now. Immigration and family law. I have a family, a home. None of it would have happened the same way without you." Brittany's words flashed in my mind. Too old to be useful. Resentment sharpened. Too old for my own family, yet somehow what I'd done still echoed through this man's life. The contrast stung. "I'm glad you did well," I said quietly. "I'm sorry you're finding me like this." "You don't owe anyone an apology," Daniel said firmly. "What was done to you is wrong." Wrong. The word made my eyes burn. In my family, they'd called it stress, miscommunication, life. Daniel called it what it was. He crouched in front of me. "Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight?" I thought of the dark cottage in Pine Hollow, safe technically, but lonely. A place to disappear so no one had to feel uncomfortable. I'd spent my whole life making things easier for others. "I was going to Pine Hollow," I said. "I thought I'd just vanish." Daniel shook his head. "Not like this. Please come stay with us tonight. Just tonight. You shouldn't make decisions like this alone." In his car, holding my suitcase, I felt guilty, like I was betraying my son just by accepting kindness. Angry at myself for still caring. Angry at him for making me feel that caring was my duty. Daniel's house was warm, alive, family photos, a dog barking. His wife, Linda, hugged me without hesitation. At dinner, their grandchildren listened wide-eyed as Daniel told stories about Ms. Lopez staying late, helping him read, telling him he could be anything. I barely recognized myself in those stories. Later, Daniel grew serious. "What they did to you may not just be unkind, it could be unlawful. I want to help." "I don't want to hurt my son," I whispered. "You're not hurting him by protecting yourself," he said. "You're setting a boundary." I thought of the money I'd signed over, the checks, Brittany's cool voice. "It's not really your home." "All right," I said. "You can look into it. I won't go back there the same way." Something settled inside me. I was still hurt, still afraid, but I wasn't just the woman crying in a bus station anymore. I was a woman choosing herself. The first time I saw the letter Daniel wrote to my son, my hands went cold. It was printed on heavy paper with his firm's name at the top, filled with phrases I had never expected to see connected to my life: full accounting, misuse of funds, possible financial exploitation. That last phrase made my stomach twist. Part of me wanted to tear the letter apart, to shield Ethan from words that sharp. Another part remembered Brittany's calm voice saying, "It's not really your home," and felt a deep, steady anger settle in my chest. Daniel walked me through everything he had uncovered: bank statements, closing documents from Ethan's house, transfers from my accounts into theirs. "This amount here," he said, tapping the page, "was your inheritance. It went toward the down payment. And these monthly transfers, that's your Social Security. Most of it went straight into their joint account." I stared at the numbers. I remembered each decision clearly. "Of course, honey, I don't really need it. If it helps with the mortgage, that's good for all of us." I had spoken with love. On paper, those words turned into evidence. When Daniel asked if he could send the letter, I hesitated. I could already hear Ethan's voice. "How could you do this to us, Mom?" I imagined Brittany talking about loyalty, about family. Even in my thoughts, they made me feel like I was the one doing something wrong. Then I remembered how easily they had planned to move me into a facility, like a home project. They hadn't asked. They had informed me. That memory made the decision for me. "Send it," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't take it back. The letter went out by certified mail. 2 days later, my phone started buzzing while I sat at Daniel's kitchen table, helping Sophia with her spelling. Brittany's name flashed on the screen, then Ethan's. I let both go to voicemail. Every vibration stirred the old instinct to rush in and fix things. But this time, their discomfort came from being asked to answer for their choices. I held on to that. We agreed any conversation would happen from Daniel's office. When Ethan finally called at the scheduled time, my heart pounded so hard I could hear it. I sat beside Daniel's desk, hands folded tight in my lap. He put the call on speaker. "Mom, what is this?" Ethan demanded, skipping any greeting. "You sent us a legal notice? You hired a lawyer against your own family?" He said lawyer like it was something dirty. Resentment flared. He had gone along with pushing me out, but somehow I was betraying family by asking questions. Daniel explained calmly that he represented me, that I had concerns about how my money had been used and about attempts to move me without my consent. I heard Brittany whisper something. Ethan repeated it. "Brittany says you're blowing this out of proportion. You lived with us for years. We gave you a home. Now you're acting like a victim." That word cut deep. Acting. As if this was a performance. I thought of eating dinner alone in my room, of being told not to join their friends, of decisions made without me. Each one had pushed me a little farther away. Now my hurt was being dismissed as drama. Daniel glanced at me, giving me space. For a moment, I fought myself. I could stay quiet, let others speak, keep the peace like always, or I could finally speak for myself. "Ethan," I said, surprised by how steady I sounded, "I moved in to help. I gave you money so you could buy that house. I cooked, I cleaned, I picked up your boys. And then I was told I was being sent away because I was too old to be useful. That isn't giving me a home. That's using me until you're done." Silence followed. Then Brittany's voice came through, controlled and sharp. "We never said that. You're twisting things. We were trying to do what's best for everyone." That phrase again. Best for everyone. It always meant best for her. Daniel stepped back in, outlining the amounts, the lack of my name on the deed, the plan to move me without consent. He explained the laws around pressuring older people and controlling their money. Ethan protested about family matters and outsiders, accusing Daniel of filling my head. Hearing my son talk like I couldn't think for myself lit another fire inside me. I wasn't fragile. I wasn't confused. I was paying attention. In the end, faced with Daniel's certainty and the possibility of formal action, they agreed to work toward repayment. Brittany sounded less polished then, more worried about appearances than about me. They complained about fairness, about inconvenience. Each word made it clearer how little they had considered my side. While Daniel handled the legal details, he also had my Pine Hollow house inspected. It needed work. Steps, wiring, the roof. Instead of telling me it was too much, he said, "Let me take care of it." When I protested, he smiled. "You helped me start my life. Consider this interest." Weeks later, when I walked into the renovated cottage, I barely recognized it. Fresh paint, safe floors, warmth, light. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No one could tell me I was just staying. I felt pride where resentment had lived. Life there began slowly. The library, baking for neighbors, the Rivera family visiting on weekends. My anger toward Ethan and Brittany didn't disappear, but it stopped running my life. It stayed as a quiet reminder of what I would never accept again. By early spring, Pine Hollow finally felt like it belonged to me. I had a rhythm now. Mornings at the library, afternoons in the yard, or baking something simple. Sundays when the Rivera family drove up and filled the cottage with noise and warmth. What Ethan and Brittany had done to me still existed, but it no longer sat in my throat every minute. It stayed in the background where it belonged. One Saturday afternoon, I was trimming dead leaves from a potted plant by the front window when I noticed a familiar car at the end of my driveway. For a second, my heart jumped, the way it used to when Ethan stopped by unannounced. Then I caught myself. My home was no longer a stop along his routine. This visit required effort. It was intentional. He got out slowly, closing the car door with more care than I remembered him ever using. He looked thinner, older than 42. His shoulders sagged, as if one weight had been lifted and replaced by another. As he walked toward the house, I noticed his hands were empty. No flowers, no peace offering, just him. Part of me bristled at that. I had given him money, time, years of my life, and he couldn't even bring coffee. Then I heard the bitterness in my own thoughts and felt another ache. I didn't want to judge the way Brittany judged people, measuring worth by what they brought. Still, resentment whispered that once again, I was the one opening the door. I did. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. The word warmed something in me, even as anger rose beside it. This was the same voice that had gone quiet when Brittany planned my removal, the same mouth that had told me I was acting like a victim. "Ethan," I said evenly, "come in." He stepped inside and looked around the small living room, the photos on the wall, the quilt folded on the sofa. I watched closely, waiting for an offhand remark, for the old habit of shrinking my space. "It's nice," he said at last. "It feels like you. I don't think I ever understood what that meant before." There was no joke in his tone, no edge. That almost made me angrier. Where had this awareness been when I slept in his spare room and cooked in his kitchen? We sat across from each other at the table. The silence stretched. For once, I didn't rush to fill it. "I signed the last papers," he said. "The house is in escrow. You'll be paid back in full when it closes." He stared at his hands. "Brittany filed for divorce. The boys are mostly with her right now. They're angry with me." Each sentence rubbed against old wounds. He had built that house on promises to me, then pushed me out of it. Now he was losing it. Part of me thought, "You chose this." Hearing about my grandsons hurt most. I'd loved them like a second chance, and now they were caught in the middle of choices their parents had made. "I'm sorry things are hard," I said carefully, "but you know why this happened." He nodded, eyes wet. "I do, and that's why I'm here." He took a breath. "I treated you like a problem to manage. You gave us your money, your time, your body, your life. And when it stopped being convenient, I didn't fight for you. I stood there and let my wife say you were too old to be useful, and I stayed silent." Hearing those words again sent resentment surging. I saw myself at that kitchen counter, crumbs in my hand, dignity slipping away. I almost stopped him, but something in his face told me he needed to say it. "I blamed stress," he continued. Work, kids, money. But the truth is, it was easier to let you disappear than to stand up for you. I knew about the inheritance. I knew how much you gave, and I still agreed when she said you should go. Each admission landed hard, but beneath the pain was relief. For so long, I'd wondered if I was imagining how wrong it all felt. Hearing him say I knew told me I hadn't. He told me about therapy, about taking a teaching job. I wanted to do something honest, he said. I wanted to be more like the parent you were. I respected the effort, but resentment tightened anyway. Why did it take losing everything for him to see my worth? I'm not asking you to forget, he said. I just don't want this to be the end. I sat very still. One part of me wanted to hug him, to smooth it over like I always had. Another remembered the bus station, the tears, the silence. That memory kept me seated. I won't go back to how things were, I said. I won't live in your house again. I won't let anyone decide where I belong. If you want to be in my life, it happens here, on my terms. If I feel myself shrinking again, I will step away, and I won't apologize. He nodded. That's fair. We talked a little longer. When he left, the cottage felt bright and still. Sunlight warmed the floor. I moved through each room, touching solid things that were truly mine. Later, with a cup of tea and the quiet ticking of the clock, I understood something simple and final. I no longer had to earn my place in anyone's life. Anyone who wanted me now would have to meet me where I stood, an older woman in a small, steady home, finally unwilling to disappear to make others comfortable.